Hi, everyone. So, we are going to be talking about Betsy Ross, and that came across today on a request. And so, what we're going to do is we're going to look at Betsy Ross and how she played a huge role here in America. First, we're going to do the stones, and first, we're going to look at Black Obsidian. And what she's showing me in mediumship, after what we had talked about in Salem witch trials, it is something that was unbeknownst. And when it's unbeknownst, it means it comes like a forthcoming. And when it comes as a forthcoming, you can't get around. And around is it's spelled round, but ROUN. And round was a type of like white powder, like a white liar, which is a type of explosiveness. It's a little bit heavier than a Vesta powder, and you usually see it not a lot here in America, more in the Middle East and Eastern Europe. And when that came through during that time period, you couldn't do. And when you couldn't do, you couldn't cry, you couldn't sweat, you couldn't do a lot of things, and you couldn't do elimination. And when you couldn't do elimination, that meant you couldn't do anything because you were stuck around the house. So it's just a type of physical discomfort. So they usually use it in that time period for a lot of things. I see a lot of cannon fire. I see a lot of fireworks. I see a lot of ways that something could get done. Um, so that word done comes again. So we're seeing a lot of like a religious roots still come through these stories. I do see a little bit of a continuance on from Salem, but it was very different. And they're showing me the weeping willow trees down south. And when they're showing me these weeping willow trees, she was gardening and she was kicking up the dirt and the soil to find the white flecks, which it has a different type of ordinance to it. It's almost like an organic chemistry that they were looking at, but they really didn't identify as organic chemistry as what they see today. So when I pick up my blue agate, I see clear water. I see a like Florida area, believe it or not. I see a seashell. I see a conch, and I see like the link of a conch out. And when I pick up my crystal quartz, I'm going to look through it again. She leads me right back up to Georgia, but then up to New Hampshire, and then a little bit of Connecticut and a little bit of New York. And there's something around, she kept saying Albany, Albany, Albany. And there was really nothing about it until they saw a donkey. It was young, less than a year old. And then I see a dog, I see a cat, I see I see a yearling. I do see another farm animal. I do see a flock of another farm, which I leads out to Rhode Island, and it's showing me almost like that red house, like the Conjuring house. And she's taking me back, like she led me fast over out to California. So she's leading me like on this like trail. She's not speaking, but she's staring a lot, Betsy Ross. So when this comes through, you just can't do. And she's crying while she's standing in the field. And I just can't do this at all. I wonder how. Owl. I can't do. And that's when they would just all turn and look at each other and say, I just already know what's going on. And so they would plant their crop, they would do their farming, they would tend to their animals, they would do their daily business. And then what they did in their house is like what they did in their house. It wasn't to be explained. And it's kind of like today, like what happens in your house is your own business. And I keep wanting to bounce my leg, and that's why the camera is shaping too. And I see a type of like antsiness, but it's almost like a continuance, like on like a rev up, a pace out to get it done, a DONE. I see a passing along, and then that's when she grabbed a gift, and she found it in a type of pertinence. And pertinence was easier explained during those times as something that was so simply given that they used it on a daily, and that is what they were known for. So the moldavite comes out, and it has a solidifier of iron, but I see more of a type of coal. And I'm going up to West Virginia to the coal mines, and holding the black tourmaline. The coal mines had such a fire explosiveness to it, where the dust would remain in the lungs, and that is how we had coal miners lungs. And then when she's like leading me back to like common things, like down to Dolly Parton and coal miner's daughter, and then coming right back up, and I'm seeing a Patsy Cline. But then when I see Patsy Cline, I'm like, it's a true truth. And when it sees a true truth, you go back out to somebody else. They're like, I don't even know you. You're so unbeknownst. I can't just do this all day long. So when I'm sitting here and I'm like clearing out, this person says, I just can't do anything. I have like up a gastric pain. I have this. And that is what they were all going through. So during that war period, it had all these ailments that they were like, this is so happening again. Like, this is so common. Why do we have this? And it's something that their doctors just could not explain, because it was almost like a button lips, because I see this. So let's see what's going on for the tarot cards during that time with Betsy Ross, and how it led up to Salem, Massachusetts. So someone in that time in the Revolutionary War that is surrounding the North Church is leading me out to the outskirts where Boston University, I'm seeing Harvard, I'm seeing MIT. It's definitely a higher level learning, a college that you can't get it done. You can't get it done. They were quick, like they were quick to give information to each other. They're finally showing me. So when they were able to communicate quickly, it was like a type of gift. It was a type of like knowing. It was a type of telepathy. It was a type of communication that was what we would call unbeknownst. So I see a stagnation with the Ace of Pentacles in reverse. There was a lack of resources. I see that there was some issues with the males, like they showed me how strong that male presence was. I see almost a lessening of that poverty stance. I do see law enforcement and militia more than the military. And I see like a type of hypervigilance of a type of a stay back again, like they were experiencing in Salem. They're showing me a revolving door. They're showing me a spoke wheel. They're showing me a wheel and they make my eyes cross-eyed sometimes when they want me like blocked from whatever was coming through. It was like a severe pause again, and it was about they're showing me like, oh, they couldn't even tell the time how long that pause was. This was something that was like heavily guarded, and when they communicated, it was as soon as they got that word of done, they couldn't hear the first few words, so then it hit them. I do see her having her like up her skirt, the flag. I do see her sewing. I do see her boot. I do see her stockings. And this is where she had a lot of her wealth, her security. And it wasn't derogatory and it wasn't lewd. It was something like we have, like that's where she kept her stock. And it was something with the flag that you couldn't be unbeknownst. You couldn't be known. And I see all forms of that spelling also. So when she used that flag, it was a lack of options for that person. So when they use those people, they literally were the interceptors to get it done. And that interceptor helped cut away and to show the lack of logic of what was going on. They were a type of healer. They were literally someone who could give a little bit of hope and then divvy out the work. It was a struggle to become like that. They had to really work. So they intercepted again into my mouth. They do this all the time when I'm trying to get onto something. They were really well balanced mentally and emotionally and physically, even though they didn't always look at it. It looked like they weren't really strong at their skill. And it looked like they were not a whole lot of things. They were really masters of their craft, and it really was a form of trickery at times. But there was something of a lack. And that's when a lot of rumors would come through, as always, even to this day. They would stop the haste. But that would be the ending of something. And that is when prudency was key, consistency was key, keeping it revolving was key. And that is where we see like a lot of issues as it is today, because we see a lot of things that come through that we want to end, but why does it keep being consistent? Why do we have to keep it going? And that is where like a lot of our heartbreak is in today that I'm seeing as a psychic. It's a lack of knowing, they would say, but really there's a lot of knowing that there's something going on, no matter what you identify with, if it's Democrat or Republican. And that is what she's saying for me right now. You literally have to look out the window and have that future vision to get it done, to get it done. That is where judicial injustice come through, was sitting at the stand. So now she's showing me the courthouses. And when you go through the courthouses, you can't do a lot of things of a pertinence done, because you have to sit and listen, and it's all intuitive, highly intuitive listening. It is a lot of observancy, and that's where observancy is key to where they have the lack of manifestation, which is the Page of Pentacles in reverse. Now, it would be a little bit of a deceit to a degree. but that is where the spark of fire and the new beginnings happen a lot of times. And that is where we see a fail. And they say there's a fail in the justice system. And that is what was happening in that time period with Betsy Ross. There ended up being a type of seclusion to a type of hermit mode. And it was a lack of looking into per se, but it really was a transitions with that Six of Swords coming through. That was where the new beginning is, the Fool. The Fool represents a lot of naivety. It is a lot of spontaneous venture, which ends up being a little bit on a whim and impulsive with the Page of Wands. Now, with the Four of Swords in reverse, it has a little bit of unrest with it. But with that time period, it was kicking up, and it had to do with the drought that was coming through, and there really was no rain. She is showing me one thing that caused the tower moment, and it had to do with an ox. It had to do with a type of flooding that came in. It had to do with everything coming through on trains. It came through harshly when that time came through, when it was a time to call for war, because there was no gunpowder enough. And that is what sparked a lot of the things that were happening to cause it. I hear a lot of deafness. I do see, she showed me scarlet fever. That is where they finally made their breakthrough, and that was the Ten of Swords. They had to see something with evident proof that was manifested, and that's when there's like, is this witchcraft? Is this a set in? Is this something that was planned and planted? They couldn't understand at all. So leaning back, and she's showing me again that like it went to, is this bad male energy? Is this bad female energy? Is this misogyny? Is this toxic matriarchy? They just couldn't put their finger on it. And they say in mediumship, it's just still really, really hard to understand exactly what's going on. So then people started making their own judgments, and it ended up being like a law of the land, and this is my property, and then you can't go on my property and do anything to for attack. And that is what we identify as criminal laws today. But the basis of known of criminal law actually goes up right to the amendments to the constitutional law of the Bill of Rights, almost at the end of the Bill of Rights. And that is where the wish fulfillment comes in, is that towards that time period, at the end, they were trying to ratify up in the Philadelphia area, as we know as Independence Hall. Now, with the Nine of Pentacles, that is what they had planted so they can have set in stone law. Set in stone law for them was something that was so concrete. In penmanship, you couldn't move it at all because everyone was in agreement. And it was all on the basis of fact of known that everyone could identify with it. But it was still an incomplete cycle. Now, when she was doing her work, Betsy Ross, she couldn't do a lot of things. A lot of things. I do see ailments. I do see like a rheumatoid arthritis with her. I do see cuts and bruises. I don't see anything massive, but I do. She's showing me how she passed away, and it was a type of illness. It was a chronic disease. She's showing me a little bit of her lungs, but it was like a whole body, like a rheumatoid, like a fibromyalgia, a type of ailment that she carried with her. It was spoken to her that it would happen as a premonition. And literally, that was where like dishonor was for her. Let's see what else this deck is. They said a couple more out of this deck. It was a loss. I do see something. She did not lose her flag. She did get it sewn. She did get it to the relay that where it needed to go. I do see sutures that day, and that was planted. That was pretty prudent of her to do it up there. They're showing me this type of greed that was coming in. I do see a dragoon type of English horseman coming through that was not well trained at all. That was their unfulfilled wishes. And that energy of the deck is the chariot, and that was the driving force. That was the catalyst of what was going to happen. Now, on the split of the deck, you have the Queen of Swords, and that has a lot of logic. That has a lot of cutting away to it. This has a lot of justice, this Ace of Swords. Now, this was something that was young, and it was something new that they were trying, and it had to do with elixirs. And the elixir was almost like I see the distillery. I do see it was almost like a form of vodka, but I don't see it made with potatoes. I do see it was controlled. It was a type of source. I do see almost like a little bit of a freak of the night. They were really excited about this. And I know I keep like bouncing my leg, but they're really excited. They're really, really, really excited that I'm talking about this. They say it's very common of today. It is the families were wishing for this. They were really wishing for that to come through because it was they just couldn't get rid of it. It was just like a family reunion. It was something that they couldn't understand. Then all of a sudden something would happen, and then they would have to. They lost money on the elixir, like how we have it today. They weren't really thinking about it. They weren't really thinking of a whole lot of things when they did this, but literally it was something that they could not plant. They couldn't grow it, and so that they lost stock in it. So the Page of Wands literally shows that this person cannot even explain how fast it fired down. It was so good and secure to get money like that. And they're like, no, 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 no. Like it just came in really swift and it works really well. And you could just do this. Look at this. And it was like, no, this is what caused the pause. And it was that argument of this medication does this and this medication does that. And you just can't understand, but it really is emotionally good. Like it's really good. It makes me emotionally balanced. Now, with that being said, it still was not restful. So they wanted sleep. Like they want me to tell this story, how it just makes you sleep and how it's so common even today. And that's why it's so funny that in that time period, they were having the same problems as we were. It made them weak. They could see the future in this elixir. It was absolutely true. And then I see the Englishmen come in and they're like, we need to get guard this. Like, we can't do this anymore. And I just see her doing, this is like perfect. This is absolutely perfect. Like, I'm going to steal this right away. Because it just completed exactly what I was saying, what I had heard. I just couldn't get it out. But there was that lack of inheritance, that lack of money, that security in it. but all it did was just literally end it, like just relieved the incident so they could regain. And it was only for a few months, but that hidden motive, that's the high priestess. It was the hidden motive, it was the psychic connections, it was something like that. And back then, you still could not be psychic. You were knowing, you knew it, you were knowing, and that's all you were to say. um the page of cups in reverse represents that you just can't get it out at all. uh it's the naivety of that is literally the apathy. That is the four of cups of the discontent. The four of pentacles in reverse shows the lack of resistance. The king of pentacles shows that it is a type of wealth again, but it was an ill contract. It was an ill form of law enforcement. It was an ill form of anything. And that is where they had the celebration, and that's when they could have those community meetings and they could have all of those things. But they had to work their magic, and they're like, aha, there it is, you're doing magic. That's ill, that's illegal. And they argued, they're like, that's not ill or illegal, it's a lack of options. Like, we have nothing else to do except do that. But in reality, that Knight of Wands in reverse is just something that you just couldn't understand at all, of that reversal. Where is this new beginning starting? So that new beginning is where that wish fulfillment is, and that's the Sun card. When it comes through so hard, you can't deny it, of what was going on. You have to say it's kaput. And that is what Betsy Ross really wanted to allude to. When she drives it up to Paul Revere, into Massachusetts, into the other areas, and to Salem, it was a type of inhibition. It was a type of addiction. It was a type of gamble that people were doing. It's nothing new that we're not seeing today. That is where their partnerships were coming, and they had a hard time identifying their partnerships because they hit them so well through and through. All in all, it was a type of skill that was carried on, and that is where a lot of criminology comes in, is if they are coming back and they're doing the same patterns of behavior. Are they doing the same patterns of anything? And that is where they have a lot of contentment in. Now, the communication would come in quickly. It would like come in almost like a velocity. So you almost had to sit with it. And that is where a lot of people would complain, like they're just not doing anything at all. And that is where they're just careless. But it really was a crossroads of unbeknownst. That ill justice per se would come in, but you can't rush into it. And they would say it would be a disrupt of emotions. The Five of Swords is such a cutaway of, it's a seat of a betrayal, of almost an own, where someone could actually just sit there quietly and say, I already knew, and sat there proudly. And that is where the day of lament comes in. And the day of lament is such a power off, a power on of absolute heartbreak. Lament is a type of many meanings. It means sorrow, and it means other things as it is today. But I'm seeing that they want it to still remain a little bit a mystery. They don't want to have it just right now today to come out what they mean by lament. They're very pushing back on that. It was a type of like a hostage at times of the arguing, and it was the struggle, because I'm seeing the skirmishes in the streets all of a sudden. and it was surrounding the taverns, but a lot of times it was after seclusion. And there was a lack at that time. It was an ending. A lot of times it had to do with a death and an end to get it all done, an absolute defeat. And that is where the walking away and the turning points would come. And that energy has a lot, again, with the Queen of Cups. So let's look at the runes and see exactly what's going on with that. Now, as far as the wood runes go, I see Dagat, and that was something about the day. That was something of the faded rune, and it keeps flip-flopping. I do see more a destiny. And it was when they had destiny during that time, it had to go towards the living. And it had to do a lot with birth. And they're showing me how the the births were of the midwifery, and that was where a lot of joy was coming in, and how they would actually help and gather in. And because Hera usually means harvest, so I'm seeing like them preparing for a birth, and it really is like a gift that they would have during that time. And it really had to do with how heritage was and how they prepared for it. And it was a type of luck, a gift, and it flowed really well. I do see the house, I do see a well, I do see like a starting off gift, but really I see a wheel of fortune. I do see it caused havoc at times. I do see like a dowry. This is like a little bit all over the place, and it was a type of defense that was coming through. Uh, that that energy flow towards that initiation. It was like a type of initiation. It was something at night that causes that freeze. It was a game. I do see trolling, like a type of game. I do see the person who wants to be the husband. I do see the woman. I do see antics. I do see it cause like nervousness. I do see it something hidden. I do see a type of law enforcement, but they were a little bit more military at that time that would actually, it's something that was protecting at night in regards to how we see Paul Revere, Salem, and Massachusetts in that time period of the 1600s down to the 1700s, almost the 1800s. And that is where Habo, which usually means gift, means a crossroads beknownst of thee, and that is power. So it's almost they show a remembrance be remembering yourself and remembering who you're supposed to be with. So that type of initiation that was coming through of do you remember who you are from a past life? And that is where the strength is. I do see they noted that some people were trying to do a continuance on from another life after passing down of word of mouth, historical stories like lore. But then by then, lore was not magic. It wasn't a type of witchcraft. It was something of something heard around town of what was historical. Now, I do see a connection to the birch trees. I do see the power. I do see a type of a trolling, and I'm seeing this like a constant when you take the rubber band or a string and you're doing this. And I do see a warrior, but I see all like legal, I see all military, I see all healthcare, I see all agriculture. It was such a community that came together. It was a little bit like they grew up together. That was they got in this in the rune. It means it was that was the bomb that they would find, is that these friends would find each other all the time, and they would literally ash this incident. And that's what we were talking about in the first Salem video, in the first few Salem videos, was that they were burning birch, and there was something about that towards that criminal, that they ended up remembering each other, and that was how hard their magic was, even at their lowest point. And that is where a lot of it, and a lot of what they're showing me, like an epigastric, they go they do that when something happens, and it happens a lot at night. They're showing a lot at night, and they can't understand uh where that luck came from until maybe one or three, and they're literally just driving down the road like, we've had to do this before, we've had to do this before. And a watt in the strength of that literally shows where you can't even do it, you can't even do it that day. It's just like you're at ends meet and you just can't even do anything anymore. uh so wool has to do with something with the sun rays, and I'm seeing how a healthcare today relates it to a vitamin D. We're lays out in the to get vitamin D. And when vitamin D actually metabolizes into the body, it has a catalyst to calcium. And when it has a catalyst to calcium, it's a binder. And when it has that binder in you, you go about and you have these aha moments. There's something neurologically with the process of that remembrance be that muscle memory, intuitive memory of many things happening all at once. And that is where that defense comes in. And that is where I'm seeing today a lot of teamwork comes in. And that is where the true gift is. Now, that havoc, or per se, where that disrupt is, they would say is heritage. And that is where they lead it out to stop where it is today, where we have our disciplines that all of us have worked together to get the job done, because all of us have worked at some point in a little everything. And that is where these historical figures and mediumship are showing, like, that is where you need to go. Just trust where you're led, trust your instinct and your intuition, even if you're not psychic, because it's just muscle memory. So when they say, I know it's against the law, it's because they know it, even though they can't say it verbatim per se. I keep saying per se, per se, per se. So there's some legal documents that I feel are coming through. And the next, I see a 1 to a 4 to a 9 to a 4 delay. And that's all you need to know. In the next few videos, we'll try to get out a little bit more as we can. Other than that, we'll talk to you all soon. Have a good day.